Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Limitless Run Masterclasses. My name is Asha. I'm a social worker with Limitless. And thank you all for joining us and watching us right now. So, a quick introduction to the Limitless Run. It's our annual run for hope, whereby whatever money was raised in the run will go towards providing more resources, providing more treatment, and providing more counseling sessions to young people who reach out to us for help in the coming year. If you like to talk to us or reach out to us, you can find us at hello@limitless.sg, or you can connect with us on Instagram at we.r.limitless, as well as on TikTok at limitless.sg. Right. So if you happen to also know someone who is living in depression, or you would like to kind of explain depression to someone else, we have an application that you can use and you can download, right? It's called A Day in the Life. And by going through the application, you'll be playing through a visual novel that will allow you to kind of like live a day in the life of a young person struggling with depression. And your choices will determine the way her day ends. It's going to be a great tool to be used to kind of help someone who doesn't understand depression learn a little bit more about what it entails. Yeah. So, like I mentioned earlier on, the Limitless Run is our annual fundraising run whereby we try to raise enough resources to provide support for the young people that reach out to us every year. This year we've had more than 700 people reach out to us, right? And of that 700, more than 28% of them struggle with suicidal ideation. You know, your donations are important to us. If you would like to give a one-time or even a monthly donation, you can go to give.asia/limitless to support our work. All proceeds will go to our helpline, casework counseling, and mental health outreach. It costs us about $65 for every hour intervention. And here's where it goes. Our helpline provides short-term therapeutic support for young people who may not be struggling with such or severe issues. Sometimes a little bit of distress, a little bit of like struggle, but what we have, are social workers and counselors who are at the ready to provide, on-the-go support for them for up to 3 weeks. It also serves as our triage, whereby we identify more severe cases that will enter into our casework and counseling program. And when we think about casework and counseling program, it is our way of treating young people who struggle with mental health issues. We provide treatments such as cognitive behavioral therapy, EMDR, right, and multiple other psychotherapy modalities, whereby we also provide case management for young people who may be struggling, right, with their mental health and need more support, maybe from their families, from their schools, who may need support from a hospital as well. Part of this also includes crisis intervention. As earlier mentioned, 28% of the youths who reach out to us struggle with suicidal ideation. And often, right, our caseworkers are busy at night, engaging them, engaging their families and preventing them from escalating, their issues as well. So if you would like to kind of support us, do follow us. And, I will encourage you to give to our programs at give.asia/limitless. But enough of that for now, right? I'd like to kind of introduce a friend of mine, right? His name is Ming Xiu. Yeah, Ming Xiu. How are you doing, Ming Xiu?
I'm good. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you guys. Thanks so much for making time to join us on a Thursday evening.
Yeah, Ming Xiu is the executive director of Campus Sci. Right, he has run an awesome organization, and Campus Sci does a lot of work training young people to do peer support. Right, he's a good friend of mine. He's tuning in from Ho Chi Minh today, right? So thank you for doing that, Ming Xiu. Right, I'm gonna pass the time over to you. Take it away, man.
Sure, thanks, Asha. Okay, without further ado, let's begin. Yeah, very good evening, guys. So today's masterclass, it's on the topic of creating an ecosystem of peer support for all. So we're just going to share a bit about the work that we've been doing at Campus Sci in terms of working with different partners in the public, private, and people sector in Singapore to create a peer support ecosystem for young people in Singapore. So the definition of youth in Singapore is actually 15 to 35. So primarily we work with this age group, similar to Asher's organization Limitless. Yeah, so as Asher has kindly introduced me, my name is Ming Siu, and I'm the founder and executive director of Campus Sci. And to those who will be tuning online for this recording session, uh, nice to see you guys too. Okay, right. So this photo was taken during our launch of Campus Sci at the Red Box, which is opposite Scape at Somerset, during our official launch in February 2017. So that was 5 years ago. We've since grown from 50 volunteers to now we have about 300 plus strong. Yeah. So those in orange you can see are our campus ambassadors. So these are youths who are aged 17 to 35 years old, studying in the Institutes of Higher Learning and also young working professionals. And they have been put through our campus ambassador training, or we call it the peer support training, for 5 weeks to about 3 months in different kinds of modules, essential modules in peer support. For example, how do you identify early signs and symptoms of mental conditions, like the more common ones like depression, anxiety? What are some of the peer support skills like active listening, expressing empathy, asking coping questions? What are some of the protocols you should take if, let's say, your friends have suicidal ideation, self-harming tendencies, and causing hurt to others? Yeah, so these are essential skill sets that they don't teach you in school. And our ambassadors, after learning that, then they'll be going back to their schools and their workplace. They will be certified as campus ambassadors by our different partners. Like you can see, we work very closely with the so-called the big four of the mental health sector, which is the Institute of Mental Health, IMH, Health Promotion Board, HPB, NCSS, National Council of Social Service, and AIC, Agency for Integrated Care. We also work very closely with youth organizations like National Council, Youth Corps, social service agencies, and healthcare institutions like CHAT, SOS, SEMH, so and so forth, and also Limitless, right? Yeah. Right. So who are we? Right. So Campus Sci, right, is a registered nonprofit organization, or in Singapore, it's called Social Service Agency. We aim to promote mental health awareness and peer support amongst youth in the schools and young working adults in the workplace. So we have 5 main key pillars: advocacy, training, support, volunteering, and intervention, which later I'll actually go a bit in depth with you guys. Our aim is to really to create an inclusive and supportive community for youth with mental health issues. Our vision is to actually rally and empower like-minded youth within the campus and beyond, alongside young working adults who are passionate about impacting the mental community from the ground up to ignite positive change in the youth mental space. Yeah. Not sure if you guys are young working adults, or are you guys still studying in school, right? Hopefully this session will really help you guys in providing peer support or basic emotional support to your peers who might be in distress. Right. I'll skip the mission and values part. Okay. So how did it all start, right? How did we rally our youth in this movement in terms of creating an ecosystem or a movement in peer support amongst young people in Singapore back in 2017? Right. So as you can see from the photo, that was my founding team, the 6 of us. So back then we were volunteering in the Institute of Mental Health, IMH. That was in late 2016. Yeah. So every Saturday mornings we will actually go to IMH, right, to serve the long stay patients, right? These are elderly schizophrenic patients who have been staying in IMH for more than 10 years already, and because of the stigma and because their family members, a lot of them have actually abandoned them, so we are like the second family to them. Yeah, so what we do is every Saturday we will actually visit them, and then we will plan like arts and craft games. Then during festive celebrations like Chinese New Year, National Day, we would have performances for them to bring joy to them, like Chinese New Year, Hari Raya, so and so forth, Deepavali. So usually after like the ward sessions itself, we will actually have like lunch together with all the youth volunteers in campus. Like that was when we realized that amongst our peers or friends in the institutes of higher learning, primarily the universities, the polytechnics, the ITs, and also the junior colleges, a lot of the youth are actually struggling with mental related issues very silently. Yeah, and these are like the more common ones, like I mentioned earlier, depression, anxiety, some like eating disorders, schizophrenia, psychosis, so and so forth. But because of the stigma that's prevalent, right? Both societal stigma and also self-stigma, they wouldn't want to go and seek help, right? Unless it's very dire. So I shared my thoughts with my team, right? Whom are volunteering together with me in IMH since 2016. Since we have a group of 20 to 30 like regular youth volunteers who wanted to do something to support fellow peers in IHLs and young working professionals to support their peers who are in distress, then why don't we rally uh, the different mental health agencies in Singapore, since we're already volunteering in IMH, right? Why don't we get the professionals to join us to co-curate a national curriculum and peer support, right? To better equip our youth, to better support them in their mental struggles. So that's what we did. We shared our idea in creating this ecosystem and movement for peer support, right? To Youth Corps Singapore, which is back then part of National Youth Council, right? So it's a national volunteering body for young people in Singapore. Back then in 2016, there were many youth-led grown-up initiatives with regards to mental health. So Youth Corps and National Council was very kind. They actually provided us with their venue, which is the red box you saw earlier. And then they also provided us with a lot of publicity, help, outreach and all. So we had our soft launch in late October 2016 during World Mental Health Month. Initially, we thought, probably just about 20 to 30 youths will turn up because mental health is such a taboo topic, right? Wow, but about 130 actually turn up. Yeah, so that's really quite amazing. We were very heartened. And out of this 130, we actually selected 50 of them to be our first batch of campus ambassadors. Yeah, so that's how it all started. And then, in 2017, we managed to actually partner the different established mental health agencies in Singapore, like Silver Ribbon Singapore, CHAT, the Community Health Assessment Team, Singapore Social Mental Health, Samaritans of Singapore, right? So that was what we did. And then we grew from a humble 4 partners to now currently we have about 50 plus to 60 partners in the public, private, and people space. Yeah. Right. So that was how we started. And then, but as you know, whenever you want to, start a project or a ground initiative, regardless if it's mental related, right, or it could be sustainability related and stuff, right, you will always need to do your groundwork, which is research and then or community needs analysis. This is what we call in the or in the social service sector, right? So we found out that with reference to Samaritans of Singapore SOS survey findings, 1 in 3 youths in a age group of 20 to 29 say that they will not consider contacting others for help when they're emotionally overwhelmed, right? So only 31.8% of young people sought help in Singapore in 2019. So that was just 3 years ago for their mental conditions, right? That's quite alarming. So which means that 2/3 of Singaporeans or youth, they wouldn't seek help even if they know that they're struggling with mental conditions, right? That's about 67%. We have about 1 million youths aged 15 to 35 in Singapore. So about 670,000 young people wouldn't seek help, right? So youths between 18 to 34 years old are the most vulnerable at risk group, right? 1 in 5 or 20% would have experienced a mental disorder in their lifetime. And this is based on a Singapore mental health study done by IMH in 2016, right? Currently, IMH Research Department is doing a second iteration of this study, right? To actually map out the new trends amongst youth in Singapore. So keep a lookout for that. Suicide remains the leading cause of death for youth aged 10 to 29 and accounts for about 1/3 of all reported deaths in this age group. Yeah, so just last year alone, we have about 367 suicide cases. You can go SOS website to check, right? Previous year, in 2020, we had about 400 plus, right? But usually, right, the highest suicide rates are amongst the youth and also the elderly in Singapore, right? So some of the barriers to help seeking, which was actually feedback by youth, we actually provide peer support to or dialogue sessions with, right? They mentioned that some key factors were lack of mental health literacy amongst young people, stigma, which I mentioned earlier, and the top 5 concerns were actually concerns about confidentiality and trust. So a lot of them mentioned that, you know, yes, they know that it's important to seek help, but when they actually go, they actually, you know, pluck up the courage to actually seek professional help, right? Be it in the schools or be it through, you know, the hospitals or the clinics and stuff, they realize that sometimes there's a breach of confidentiality. So we have students telling us that, you know, going to see a school counselor, sometimes, you know, the parents or even the teachers would have found out that they have seen a counselor, and this actually breaks the kind of trust, right, that they have for these mental professionals, and that hinders them from seeking help in the future. So confidentiality and trust issues is actually one of the top concerns amongst youth, hindering them from seeking help. Second one is on time and cost, right? Availability of resources. So most social service agencies or healthcare institutions, they operate during office hours, right? Which is actually 9 to 6. So after office hours, usually you won't be able to access this kind of services. But the thing is, you know, use feedback to us that, you know, when they need someone to talk to or when they're in struggles, usually it's during the wee hours like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning, right? And so during this kind of timing, I mean, the agencies won't be open, right? The only 24/7 hotline there is available probably would be IMH, right? And also SOS, Americans of Singapore. And then, of course, there are also other online apps and online services, right? That just now I think Asher mentioned. Then we also have myline.sg by MOHT, the Ministry of Health, Care and Transformation. But I think people would prefer to have a face-to-face kind of consultation. But during wee hours, it's pretty difficult, right? The third barriers to help seeking factor would be opening hours and location, which I mentioned earlier. The fourth one would be being judged, right, by mental professionals, and that hinders them from seeking help in the future. And last but not least, which is also one of the most important factors or reasons, would be having a permanent psychiatric record, which they're worried that would actually affect their future, you know, scholarship applications or university applications, or even hindering them from career progression. But we would always assure our youth when we do such talks and workshops that in Singapore, right, your employers or your school wouldn't be able to access your psychiatric records, right, unless you break the law. So unless you break the law, then the courts, the state courts or the subordinate courts or even the Supreme Court would be able to actually get that summon for your psychiatric record from the hospital or the private psychiatrist. Yeah, but other than that, just to assure you guys that your schools or your employees wouldn't be able to actually access your psychiatric record. Yeah. Right. So with that, right, with all the gaps and needs that we have actually found, then how do we then propose a solution to better support our youth, right, through their challenges and all the gaps and needs that that we mentioned earlier? So how do we destigmatize mindsets and help to create a culture of empathy through peer support? Right, we're not training youth to be mental professionals like psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, or social workers, but youths are actually the front line, right, to their peers when their peers are actually struggling with mental conditions. Because research has shown that, you know, the first group of people that youths actually turn to if, let's say, they find that, suspect that they might have a mental condition, right, would be the first people they go to would be their peers, their friends. But if the peers don't even know how to actually support their friends, which is most of the time, right, when your friends tell you that, hey, if I have certain, you know, very bad thoughts, negative thoughts that I might want to actually harm myself or hurt others, right? Or even some suicidal ideation. Usually, not, I don't think it's just youth. We also have adults, parents coming to us sharing that, you know, they're also caught at the loss. They wouldn't know what to do, right? So then how do we then help these young people in through peer support, right? Right, so the five main key pillars would be advocacy, right? So when we first started, right, our first key pillar was advocacy, because we realized that you can do a lot of important work, right, in terms of intervention, providing support, basic emotional support to the youth, but if they don't know about the great work that you guys are doing through social media or mainstream media, right, then then it's redundant. You can do a lot of work, but nobody knows, then nobody seeks help, right? Yeah, so advocacy was one of our key thrusts even till now. Like Limitless, we use different social media channels to engage our youth. FBIG, recently TikTok, right? Because most of the Gen Zs are on TikTok. LinkedIn also for young working professionals. Yeah, but apart from that, we do quite a bit of talks, both online and offline, and workshops, right, in the institutes of higher learning and the corporates. Apart from that, we do quite a bit of dialogues with policymakers, legislators, and the media to see to actually feedback some of the ground challenges that our young people are facing on the ground, so that policymakers can actually effect certain policy changes or legislation changes to better support our youth who are struggling with mental conditions. Yeah, so we also do quite a bit of mental health related campaigns on a national level, right? So we co-lead the Youth Alliance, which is part of the Beyond the Label campaign, right? It's a national anti-stigma campaign started in 2018 by the National Council of Social Service. So together with Touch Community Services, we co-lead this 13 agencies called the Youth Alliance. Every year, we would actually organize a Beyond the Label Fest, which recently we just concluded with President Halima as our guest of honor, right? And what we do is that we put together different partners to come together to showcase different mental health related resources, apart from the more common ones like IMH and all that, because a lot of times Singaporeans don't know that there are a lot of good work that's being done in the social service agencies, like for example, Limitless, right? Singapore Social and Mental Health, and so on and so forth, right? And also the healthcare institutions. A lot of people wouldn't know that you can go to actually a polyclinic to get a referral from a GP, right? To actually seek help, psychiatric help in IMH or other hospitals. Yeah. So these are very important work in terms of advocacy and all that. Then the second key pillar is training, right? So every year we train about 50 to 100 youths age 15 to 35 years old with basic mental literacy and peer support skills, so that when they go back to their schools or their workplace, then, like I mentioned, they can form communities, right, to actually provide basic emotional support to their peers who are in distress. And that brings us to our third key pillar, which is support, right? So we do provide both online and offline peer support services. So online, youth or parents or caregivers or educators or helping professionals, usually they reach out to us through our social media platforms like FB, TikTok. Parents usually they reach out to us through emails or call, right? Then from there we will actually pair them up with it's like coffee meets bagel or Tinder, where we match them with our trained ambassadors, and then from there they'll provide like one-to-one kind of text-based kind of counseling, not counseling service, basic emotional support services like peer support. Yeah, offline, we prior to COVID, we do quite a bit of physical kind of peer support communities, right, in the schools and also in the workplace. And now post-COVID, we start to regain that kind of activities again. Yeah. The fourth one will be volunteering. So we started off as a ground-up initiative, serving different mental beneficiaries and partner agencies like IMH, SEMH, so and so forth. So we always believe in giving back, and we've since been serving the different partner beneficiaries since then. Of course, as I mentioned, mental health is actually a continuum, right? So you need a continuum of care to support Singaporeans who struggle with mental conditions. We have our upstream work, which is advocacy, training, peer support, and all that. But of course, we also need downstream work, right, which is actually intervention in terms of providing, like what Asher mentioned earlier, right? In terms of casework, counseling services, and stuff, and so forth. So it's important, right, that we also venture into intervention in the near future, right, to actually provide such services, so that youths who are struggling from the moderate risk to high risk cases, right, if let's say they have certain at-risk cases of being diagnosed with mental conditions, or they have certain self-harm tendencies or suicidal tendencies, then at least we have people who are able, professionals who are able to actually attend to that. We also work very closely with our partners like IMH, SOS, SEMH, right? So in any case, if let's say they need referrals and stuff, we can refer them to our partners. Yeah, so this is in a nutshell what we do. Yeah, just now I was mentioning advocacy, awareness campaigns, outreach events, mental health educational talks, shows, youth dialogues, panel dialogues, focus group discussions. So this was in 2017 at the Red Box, where we had this youth mental health escape room immersive experience. Back then, it was the first of its sorts in Singapore. So we invited, I think throughout this 3-day experience, we had about close to 1,000 youths coming together with different partners in the youth, healthcare, social service, and Institute of Higher Learning. Yeah. Then youth mental health festivals with partners in the ecosystem and dialogues with ministers. So back then, MCCY, the Ministry of Culture, Community and Youth, we had Minister Grace Wu joining us to actually had a panel discussion with youth from the 6 local universities, right, at NUS Town. Yeah. Right. So training also, these are some of the modules that we actually do, right? Intro to peer helping, basic mental literacy, suicide myths, misconceptions, de-escalation skills, active listening, expressing empathy, so and so forth, and self-care coping strategies. Right. So these are some of photos that for our first cohort. Right. Peer support, just like I mentioned, one of our key pillars, raising awareness, importance of mental health amongst our students, and also how do we then refer and direct them to and help them to build a student-led, informed, and supportive communities in the schools and also in the workplace and the corporates. I mentioned earlier, right, we do provide online peer support services, which is called eSci, the e-peer support for youth, right, in short. Right, it's a Bayou for Youth email online peer support service. Now we've expanded it to even Zoom and other text-based kind of services like WhatsApp and Telegram. These are manned by our trained ambassadors and supervised by professionals. And then the ambassadors are trained to help to identify early signs and symptoms of mental health issues amongst their peers and to reach out to support fellow peer youth who might need such services. Promote help-seeking behavior, right? Because awareness is one thing, but if you don't seek help, then it's of no use also. So we hope to promote early help-seeking behavior amongst our young people, increasing knowledge and accessibility. Yeah. Right. So volunteering, which is our 4th key pillar, right? So these are some of photos that we took serving our friends in IMH. We call them special friends, Chinese New Year, as you can see, Christmas, so and so forth. And then we also support the youth who might be struggling with mental conditions at SEMH, Singapore Social Mental Health, through like rock climbing, kayaking, so and so forth. Okay, so enough of that, right? Now we will go straight into some of the national findings, right? This statistics that's found by the national polls done by National Council during COVID-19 itself, right? So it was actually found that the top stresses related to use during COVID or even post-COVID, right, are very similar across each the different age groups of use, right? So future uncertainty over their future or their finances, struggling with home-based learning, working from home, social isolation, and these top 3 reasons, even till now post-COVID, uncertainty over future and their finances is also common amongst youth who might be graduating from universities or young working professionals who might have families or young working adults, right? But of course, with regards to the struggles with home-based learning and working from home arrangements, not so much because now we are post-COVID, right? Social isolation sometimes more often or more common during COVID, during the restrictions and all that. And these top 3 reasons are similar across all age groups in amongst the youth category, race and employment. However, youth who are parents or young parents indicated being most affected by struggling to work from home, right? Even till now, because a lot of hybrid kind of working arrangement, right? Post-COVID for young parents to have to take care of their young children, and then they have to also at the same time attend to meetings over Zoom and all that. It adds to the stress and pressure with these additional demands and responsibilities. The other challenges raised are like, for example, changing mindsets of staying at home, social isolation, relationships, conflicts amongst family members, inability to actually split work and family life, that kind of having clear boundaries, right? A lot of times during COVID, we don't even know when is, if you go to office, it's 9 to 6, right? Or 8:30 to 5:30, then after that you can go off and then you can meet up with your friends for dinner and stuff. But during COVID itself, or sometimes during hybrid work, working from home, after working hours, you are still having Zoom meetings and all that. So it blurs that kind of boundaries in terms of work-life balance, right? And so, or even student life balance. And so this actually adds certain stresses or triggers to our young people, right? It was also found that 1 in 2 youths feel that they have little interest or pleasure in doing things, and these are early signs and symptoms of stress, anxiety, and depression, right? Significant concerns with loss of control, worrying, difficult feelings, unemployed youths are the most affected. In fact, 63% indicate loss of interest and pleasure in doing things that they usually do, like their hobbies, sports, arts and craft, music, right? This group fares the worst across all aspects of stress, anxiety, and depression. Yeah. So what did we do, right? We couldn't just leave the community like that during COVID, right? So together with our partners during COVID from 2020, since the circuit breaker in 2020 April till the end of COVID, which is actually last year, right? 2 years, right? We did a national polls amongst youth aged 13 to 35 years old on what are some of the things that they hope to see Campus doing in terms of better supporting our youth in the mental health related issues, right, or distress. So the feedback to us, a lot of them mentioned that they want to be equipped with the relevant mental literacy and peer support skills so that they can better support their peers who are in distress and themselves, right? So that they can also better help themselves also if let's say they struggle with certain mental health related distress or struggles. Right. So that's what we came up with. We came up with this 5-week program called Conversation Buddy Side, or in short, it's called Conversation Buddy Peer Support for Youth, right? Because during COVID, you're quite isolated. You don't get to meet your friends, right? So this provides like a online community for you to actually meet like-minded young people to actually support each other's in their struggles. So that was post circuit breaker. I think that was around June, July in 2020. Together with different partners in the public-private space, people space, we actually came together, right, to come up with curate a 5-week session. So weekly, every evening from something like what we're doing now, right? It's a recorded session, but we have every session we have about a few hundred youths joining us over Zoom, right, for a 2-hour session in the evenings from 7:30 to 9:30. The first hour we will get our partners and ourselves to come in to share, like for example, Silver Ribbon, Singapore Social Mental Health, SOSO, and so forth, to Caregivers Alliance, right? To come in to talk about different topics, like for example, you can see, how do we help our youth detect early signs and symptoms of mental conditions? What is peer support, right? How do we support our youth who are in distress? These are essential modules, right, that will really help our young people, right? So, yeah, the first hour is mainly the professionals imparting their knowledge and skill sets. But the second hour, we will break this 100+ use into different smaller breakout sessions, right? So that they can have a more cozy time with the professionals and our campus ambassadors, our peer supporters, to actually share their mental struggles and challenges during COVID, so that we have a community of support to support them in their mental health related issues. It was quite well received. Over that 5 weeks, we reached out to about a few hundred, close to 1,000 young people during that 5 weeks. And because of the success in 2020 for Conversation Buddy side, in 2021, yes, just last year, we did a follow-up session of this also for youth. Yeah. Right. So as we know, to reach out to youth, most of us, be it the millennials or the Gen Zs, we are constantly on social media, right? So knowing the target audience and the right social media channel to reach out to them is very important, right? So working adults, usually they would be on Facebook, right? And so we are still using FB to actually engage them through our different activities and events. For the Gen Zs, those below 25 or 24, they are mostly on IG, and then of course TikTok, right? So last year we actually partnered by Done Singapore for the Youth for Good program to actually equip and train them with relevant knowledge and skill sets, to support like short videos like 30 seconds, 15 seconds, 60 seconds on different topics, like what are some of the things you shouldn't say to your peers who are in distress or struggling with mental conditions. Like you don't say, "Wow, you just snap out of it." Like everyone goes through such struggles. Why are you so weak, right? This kind of thing you shouldn't say. So we, through humor and all that, we try to actually curate like what are some of the top 5 things you shouldn't say to someone who is in distress. Then after that was quite well received. We have about like 20 to 30K views, and then from there, we actually curated like what are some top 5 things you should say to someone who might be in distress. So the youth found it pretty helpful. Through the comment section, they really appreciate what we're doing, and so then some of them even DM us to actually see if it's possible to refer some of their friends for peer support and stuff. Yeah, so TikTok is really very helpful. And Limitless, I think we can attest to them because they were also part of the TikTok Youth for Good program. Yeah. Right. So as the topic goes, it's very much on an ecosystem, right, of support we need a village to raise a child, as the saying goes, right? How can we then leverage on the power of strategic partnerships, not just in the social service sector, but also, the youth, the healthcare sector, the education sector, right? And also the private sector, because you need funding, right? Just now, Asher was doing, a lot of fundraising, right, for Limitless to actually provide them with the revenue to actually do intervention services. So this is very important, right? So we need a whole society approach to do this. So that's how the Youth Alliance was birthed, right? It's an interagency mental health community co-led by Campus and Touch, which I mentioned earlier. It's catalyzed by NCSS, National Council of Social Service, consisting of government agencies like MOE, HPB, and of course healthcare institutions like CHED, SSAs like AMKFSC, IHLs like most of the polys, the universities, and all that. So in partnership with Beyond the Label, the National Anti-Stigma Campaign, over the past 4 years, we have been promoting mental health awareness amongst youth, particularly amongst youth, because it's called the Youth Alliance, right? Through a more coordinated and integrated approach, right, to encourage them to seek help, provide peer support, and I think ultimately to actually be the catalyst for change in the movement to reduce mental stigma amongst our youth in Singapore, right? So we had our launch in 2019 at Timber Plus at One North, and we were thankful to have Speaker Tan Chuan Jin, who has been very supportive of our cause, to join us in the launch of the Youth Alliance, right? What we did, we had the Beyond the Label Youth Alliance Escape Room during the physical one, during the BTL Fest in 2019. And during COVID itself, we actually collaborated with MCCY and NYC to collate resources for use during the circuit breaker period, right? Because a lot of youth mentioned that they don't really know what to do, right? So we curate online resources for use for them to use. 2020, right? That was the start of the circuit breaker, right? And then we realized that we can't do a physical BTL Fest, right? So what can we do? We actually engage a vendor, a gaming vendor, to actually curate an e-escape room, right? Because 2019, it was a success, right? We reached out to a few thousand users, right, through the BTL escape room. So with the vendor, we actually curated 4 episodes for this escape room on different mental health related disorders, like for example, mood disorders, depression, anxiety. Then we had OCD also, we had psychosis, schizophrenia, we had eating disorder on bulimia, anorexia, and all that. Yeah, it was very well received, especially amongst the youth, because they have friends who might be struggling with these conditions, and sometimes they themselves have lived experience also. And these really help to help them gamify it and help them to actually learn it in a more fun way than just reading it through Google or Facebook, Google or textbook. Sorry, yeah. We also got our youth and IHLs involved through a e-escape room hackathon. Right, we got the 5 local polys and the 6 local unis come together for them to brainstorm on our 3rd and 4th episode. And from there, we actually had like a top 3 groups, and then from these IHLs, and then we presented them with like prizes. Yeah. Right. So apart from the Youth Alliance, another strategic partnership or ecosystem approach that we had, national, this is the Tote Board Shared Gifting Circle for Children Youth Mental Health, which Asher and Limitless is also part of. So we had 8 selected circle member agencies out of about 100 plus social service agencies in Singapore who actually work with young people and also mental related issues. So together, these agencies, we were selected, right, to actually collectively deliberate and determine how best to use public funds, right, towards collective objectives in the development of community-based mental services for children and youth, to build stronger networks and to build a more mentally resilient community amongst our youth. So over the past 3 years, 2019 to 2020, not past 3 years, it is even till now, 2022, we just recently concluded, right? We actually curated the 7 agencies we came together. We curated trauma-informed care kind of national curriculum to reach out to 3 main categories of people in Singapore, mainly the youth, the peer supporters, young working adults, and then of course we have the parents and caregivers. We also have helping professionals and the educators, because these 3 groups of people are mostly in touch with youth who might be in distress or struggling with mental conditions, right? It has been pretty well received over the past 2 years that we've been doing this, we reached out to about 20,000+ Singaporeans in these different age groups through our trauma-informed care talks and workshops. Most of these talks and workshops are online, right? Because it was during COVID itself. Of course, you need to leverage on media or mainstream media or social media, right? So we had 96.3 FM, right? DJ Anna to actually help us share this during World Mental Health Day in 2020. Apart from that, right, we were also part of the Youth Mental Wellbeing Network committee, right? So this is one of the alliances for action AFA set up following the Emerging Stronger Conversations ESC, supported by the various ministries, the key ministries like Ministry of Education, MOE, MSF, Ministry of Social and Family Development, MOH, Ministry of Health, in collaboration with MCCY and NYC. So this was actually started by Minister Desmond Lee. Back then, he was the minister for MSF, right? So he had this idea together with the ministries, relevant ministries, and then we came together. So we were part of the sort of the founding committee, right? The different ministries as the secretariat and also key leaders in the social service sector, healthcare sector came together in 2020. Yeah. So throughout the 2 years, we had about 1,500 Singaporeans from all age groups, all walks of life joining us to spearhead about 22 ground-up initiatives related to mental health. Different topics, different categories, right? Because different people, different Singaporeans have different passions, right? So we have 4 broad categories, right? We have school mental well-being, right? We have some groups coming up with ideas on how to rebrand counseling services in school so as to promote early help-seeking behavior amongst school-going children or even youth, right? To help them realize that it's okay to actually seek help in school, right? By destigmatizing or demystifying what it means to actually seek to go and see a counselor. Then, of course, we also had like the workplace well-being, and we also had peer support. Peer support was one of the bigger ones, right? So some of the grown-up projects, which includes Campus Sci One, we came up with the one-stop ecosystem peer support for youth system to provide text-based and also physical kind of mental services, peer support services for young people. Yeah. So all in all, it was pretty successful. We recently concluded the 22 projects and actually thank all the 1,500 Singaporeans, the 22 groups who spearheaded the initiatives earlier in mid-July. And that brings us to the most recent ecosystem, right, of partnerships for mental health in Singapore. The recent National Mental Health Initiative, which is part of the Interagency Task Force on Mental Health and Wellbeing, is actually the Singapore Mental Wellbeing Network, or we call it in short the SG Mental Wellbeing Network, right? So this is actually an expansion from the Youth Mental Wellbeing Network started in 2020, and it serves as the partnership arm for the Interagency Task Force on Mental Health and Wellbeing, and it aims to safeguard the mental health of people of all ages in Singapore. As you can see from the photo, Asher is in there, I'm in there, and so this is the steering committee we have, which is led by MOS Minister of State Alvin Tan and MOS Sun Xueling and SPS Rahayu Mazam. Yeah, so together there's 15 of us, right? What we aim to do during our term as the steering com is from 2022 to 2024. We're looking at how to actually save better support of Singaporeans in terms of their mental well-being, right? Through different themes. So from 2022 to 2023, we will be piloting different community well-being circles in the different constituencies or GRCs in Singapore. So for Campus Sci, we will be actually working with MOS Sun Xueling and a constituency at Punggol West to actually equip some of their youth leaders in the Punggol secondary schools to actually better support their peers who are in distress and with the well-being circles. Asher has also been working with some of the advisors and some of the GRCs and constituencies, right, with Limitless. We also had other social enterprises, like for example, Happiness Initiative, Growth Collective, right, and Touch Community Services, one of the SSAs, to actually pilot some of the well-being circles, right? So the first year, 2022 to 2023, is mostly on peer support. And we hope to scale it up to, this year we're going to pilot 4, right? But next year we're going to scale it up to about 10 to 15 around Singapore. And then from 2023 to 2024, the second The second term would be mostly focusing not so much on just advocacy, engagement, and peer support, but very much on workplace well-being, right, and also family well-being, right? Because having a supportive family and a working environment will really help our young people, right, or even Singaporeans in general who might be in distress or struggling with mental conditions. And so this would be a broad direction for the SG Mental Wellbeing Network over the next 2 years. I mean, if you have any questions in the future, and if you would like to be part of this different national initiatives that I just mentioned as an ecosystem or as a volunteer, right, feel free to let us know later during Q&A. We're going to finish soon, right? This is my last slide, or second last slide, right? I just want to leave this quote with you guys, which I really like, by this famous US anthropologist called Margaret Mead, right? Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed people can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has, right? So back in 2016, it's just a team of 6 of us, right, who founded Campus Sci, but now we have 300 plus. But how did we grow over the years? If back then that youth core didn't believe in us, right, or our different partners didn't believe in us, we wouldn't be where we were today, from a ground initiative to a SSA, right? So to you guys also, I mean, if you are passionate in, igniting change for the future of youth mental health in Singapore or any other causes, right, I will encourage you to really, you can be the change, if not you, who, if not now, when, right, you can be the change. So for more inquiries or potential collaborations, you can reach us at our email, campusscimovement@gmail.com, our Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or our LinkedIn. Yeah. So with that, thank you so much for your time. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Ming Xiu. Yeah, thanks for sharing today. It's really appreciate it.
No worries, bro.
Yeah, man. So, if you would like to continue to support Campus Sci, or like reach out to them, or get trained by them, you know where to go, right? Yeah, and once again, closing today's session, all the master classes will be available on YouTube after this. And definitely, if you'd like to continue to support Limitless and the work that we do, you know where to go. You can connect with us at www.limitless.sg, or you can do a one-time or monthly even donation to us at give.asia/limitless. All right, thank you everybody for listening, and goodbye.